Sure. For the panel. How's everyone feeling? You have an exam in 2 days about the topic. Let me see if you guys really were paying attention, right? Slowly announcing the next panel, and it's entitled Envisioning Crypto in 2030. Now, are you guys familiar with this meme? It's from a Disney cartoon few years back, and is this, you guys familiar with this one? Flynn Rider with knives on his neck, on his throat. Like, what opinion do you have on anything in crypto that would trigger people to pull out their knives and be triggered? So the reason I got very interested to be part of this conference is talking to the organizers about, you either get a conference and everyone is like, yeah, good point, amazing, so true, blah, blah. Ideally, it's called proof of talk for a reason, right? You walk in, you challenge your hardest opinions. If you leave these 2 days and your hardest opinions are still intact, you did a great job, I would say, or the speakers didn't do their job. Ideally, you want to leave with at least a broader set of arguments, right? So calling on stage is Romain from IOHK. Are you with us, sir? Dr. Saifedean Ammous, the writer of the Bitcoin Standard. Ashton, welcome back. Fun times. All right, guys. I'll be moderating this panel. Now, we can go on for another 2 hours, so let's have some fun here, right? Let's do a quick round of introductions. Ashton, go quickly, and then we'll get straight to it.
I think I already did it, but founder of Openmesh.
Yeah.
Got into Web3 back in 2015. Ever since it's full time.
Yeah.
Just never stop.
How did you explain to your parents I'm part of Web3 or crypto? How did your parents take it? Like, oh my God, what are you doing?
My parents?
Yeah, your parents.
They have no idea because they're traditional Sri Lankan people.
Yeah.
They don't even understand what is TikTok.
Okay.
So I would never try to explain what is crypto or Web3.
Yeah. So you could just tell them like you're an actor in Hollywood and they'll buy it? Is that what you're saying?
They think I'm working in a bank.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, close.
Neobank, right? Fantastic. Saifedean, if you could briefly introduce yourself. I think obviously you're well known in the industry, but one thing I definitely wanted to ask you, what was that moment for you when you were like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I need to jump on this. And I was telling him behind and backstage, I give out his book to people that are skeptical about crypto or Bitcoin or, and in general as a way of like, I'm not trying to sell you. Just read this, right? And let's have a conversation later, a proof of talk later, right? So what happened there?
Yeah, so I used to be a university professor, and I used to be very interested in money, and particularly in gold. And I came across Bitcoin pretty early. I don't even remember when I first heard about it, but I was dismissing it for the longest time. I thought it's clearly not going to work. It's just software. Human beings could never agree on how to make an artificial money work. There's a reason money has historically been gold. This is going to be a disaster, obviously. I was basically Peter Schiff before Peter Schiff was Peter Schiff. But then I chose to grow up, unlike Peter Schiff, and admit that, yeah, there's something different going on here. And I would say it was really around 2013 and 2014 when several things had happened that I thought would kill Bitcoin, but they failed to kill Bitcoin. So the Silk Road website, I thought that would be devastating for Bitcoin. It continued to work. And then Mt. Gox, Bitcoin continued to operate. So seeing that it continued to operate, and then understanding that there was mining. The first time that I read an article about mining, because before that I'd heard about Bitcoin, but I'd never really taken it seriously to research it enough. But when I first heard about the concept of mining and heard that there were people who were actually building real physical infrastructure in order to be able to produce Bitcoin, then it clicked in my mind that this Bitcoin thing is not something that people can just press a button and make more of. It's clearly more complicated than that. Otherwise, they'd just be clicking buttons rather than investing in all this physical infrastructure. So that's when it started to really make sense to me that it might be functioning in a way similar to gold. And that's when I really started to pay attention.
Aha. How did that inner circle of yours, say the university, family members, how did they take it?
I mean, they never really told me what they think for a long time, but I think my impression is that they thought of it as if I was collecting Pokemon for a while, and they were just sort of wondering why this grown man in his 30s has gotten into this weird online game. But I think around 2021 or so, they started really seeing, okay, maybe this isn't that silly anymore.
There you go. Romain, nice having you again, sir. How about yourself? Like, what was that moment for you that drew you to this space, jumped out the plane without a parachute, all in?
I started with my PhD in distributed systems. So naturally, Bitcoin is a distributed system. And I had my PI, my professor, telling me, you should look at Bitcoin. And I said, no, I'm going to build my startup, right?
Yeah.
I have better things to do in life. And that was in 2010.
Okay.
So that was very early, and I should listen to my mentors. That's what I learned, right?
Okay.
I came back to crypto in 2016 through a hackathon that was organized by Factom in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, Factom.
I was, very nice work that they did on land registries. And I was working as a CTO for a healthcare company in Austin, Texas, and I was looking at how we could apply blockchain to, removing the gatekeepers and simplifying the healthcare industry, which is incredibly complex in the US, right? So that's how I jumped in. I was like, I got the virus of disintermediation, basically, and I saw that as a way to potentially build a more equitable, fair world.
Interesting. We'll get to that equity side of things. Now, I want to ask you guys, the current state of the markets, or the industry, if you will, whether or not you support ecosystem A, B, whatever, what have you, if you extrapolate for a minute and you just observe, what is your take on it? Are we being co-opted? Is it the greatest time in the history of it? What is your take on the current state? And give you guys anyone that wants to jump in.
You can start if you.
We got the ETF happening. We survived FTX. To your point, Mt. Gox didn't kill it. So as the current state of the industry, as we're here in Paris, what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting time, for sure. I mean, blockchain is not a technology just because someone decided to build a technology. It's just a technology because there's a need. The world has been globalizing itself for a long time now, and the legacy systems don't scale, are not interoperable. For example, I always take that example when I moved from France to the US in 2015. I left all my financial history here.
Wow.
I left all my healthcare history as well. I was like a newborn when I settled in the US, right? I went to the doctor and they told me, you have no patient record. What's happening? Wow. Yeah, I'm not from this country, right? So blockchain can be that layer of, that medium of communication between the different, communities across the world and empower businesses, etc., etc. So that's the origin. And then we are in a time where I think adoption is kicking in. Yeah. And you can see that through the different blockchain protocols. Now we have communities. We have millions of people behind different ecosystems. And you have to build new features in your protocols to actually encode decentralized governance, right? It's what we are currently doing on Cardano with the Voltaire era, which is debuting this summer. Is giving a voice to the users to control the protocol, to allocate funds from the treasury, So we have communities across networks, right? You are building one. You surely have your believers behind you. And it's a great time. It's a time where we should like more interconnect our networks, work together. I see too many people arguing about my blockchain is the biggest, you know. Unfortunately, none of our blockchains will support the world transaction in all businesses. Like it's clear. So interconnecting blockchains is it's a great time actually.
Okay, so you're pretty positive.
I think I am. Yeah.
Beautiful. How about yourself, sir?
I'd say I'm also pretty positive, but I look at it from a different perspective. I think for me, the most interesting aspect in the market is the use of Bitcoin as a cash balance asset, which really is something that in the industry, perhaps people might look down upon. You keep hearing the phrase that, you know, it's boring, it's just sitting there, it's an idle asset. But I think this, this use case, if you want, has a total addressable market of roughly around $300 trillion. Because you're talking about $100 trillion roughly of physical cash around the world, and then another $100 trillion of checking accounts and saving accounts around the world, and then around another $100 trillion of government bonds. These are the things that people use as cash assets. So these are the things that just sit there. So as it stands, as it currently operates, Bitcoin is just spent the last 15 years eating up parts of these cash assets, eating up part of the world's cash assets, and currently it sits at around 1.3, 1.4 trillion dollars. So one half of a percent, roughly, of the total addressable market that it could tap into. So for me, I think that this makes the assessment of the space pretty straightforward. And I know it sounds perhaps boring, perhaps a little even not so refined, but it's very brutally true that it ultimately comes down to the Bitcoin price, because the higher the Bitcoin price, the number of Bitcoins is fixed. We know exactly how many Bitcoins there are. So the higher the price goes, the more liquidity there is in Bitcoin, the more cash balances there are in Bitcoin, the more Bitcoin is functioning as money. And so when Bitcoin's price is at an all-time high, it means Bitcoin cash balances are at an all-time high, and Bitcoin is functioning more and more as money. And I see this continuing to grow, and I think this, the signs point to growing demand for this as people become more and more used to the idea of understanding the value proposition of Bitcoin as money that is outside of the control of governments as well as outside of the control of any third party. It doesn't have issuer risk, it doesn't have legal risk, it doesn't have equity risk. It's just a pristine asset that is a natural commodity almost of the internet that anybody can own from and anybody can access. And so I think the future is bright because we're only beginning to just tap into the potential for this. And in terms of scaling, I think ultimately at this point, opening a Lightning channel costs something like $1, maybe 10 cents, maybe $10, depending on traffic, but approximately $1 in the grand scheme of things. And that allows you to join the Lightning Network and have access to sending transactions around the world at a very low rate. And this is currently, the evidence that it is scaling is the fact that it's still so cheap to get on. And I think we can have room for so many more thousands and tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of Lightning nodes to join the network and open channels with one another over the coming years, and I think build an entirely independent monetary system that is free from the control of government, offering anyone in the world the access to good money.
Ashton, your take, sir.
I see evolution of, like I've been in since 2015, what I've seen, it's kind of like people are taking Web3 stuff seriously now. It used to be like white paper and then raised $10 million. People can get away with that. Today, I think there are some sort of like a good traction happening in terms of breakthroughs. You cannot go to market and say, hey, I build this, I have this USP, and then just lie about it and get away with it. So I think accountability is kicking in. I also see some Web3 protocols now kind of equivalent to like they act like maybe like a S&P 500 companies in a different form. For many years, I I thought that innovation drives a lot of things. I mean, we live in a bubble. So to me, like, I think the speculation, because whether we like it or not, Web3, the biggest use case in Web3, in my opinion, look, you guys can disagree with this. In my opinion, the biggest use case for Web3 so far is speculation. And I refused to believe that for years. And I thought, because it's like, it's not good, because we are technologists. We have to be talking about technology and products and building some great, cool things. But when you add the token aspects, the price performance, and people decide if your token is up, let's say market capitalization over $1 billion, everyone think, yeah, you guys good. You guys know what you're doing. If your market cap is 5 mil, they're like, yeah, you're shitcoin. So I think the speculation, it's kind of like the big driving factor for Web3. And also that also helped a lot of founders to actually build things better. So I find like a very unique characteristics that exist in our world. You have like a far end, you have 10% of like really terrible people. They want to do like terrible things. And another 10%, like, they are like fundamentals people. They're the true believers. And then you've got 80%, they're like speculators to builders, to traders. I think, the whole thing of Web3 or crypto, how you want to call it, you have a predictable characteristics and predictable cycles. For whatever reasons, it's almost like it's a high probability you can predict the cycles and behaviors. Every cycle you have like some sort of a winning trend or winning theme, whether it's a DeFi or a GameFi or infrastructure, deepin, whatever it is. So every time that you pass these cycles, you have like so much talent and a concentrated of innovation and breakthroughs happening. I haven't seen anywhere that in other parts of the world has actually happened. Because for us, like even today, coming here and talking to you guys, so much pressure in terms of getting the products done, and then we have so many things happening behind the scene, right? I don't think like traditional companies able to move that fast, because you have a lot of stake in the ecosystem. So I think, in summary, I see a big difference compared to how get things done in a traditional world, where there's a banking sector or tech sector, compared to Web3.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, I want to involve you guys for a minute. There's a question I had on the train from Amsterdam to Paris, and because I'll loop it back to you guys in a second. Now, the question is this, because I struggle with it. The Bitcoin white paper, show of hands, was it the miracle that happened 10, 11 years ago, and then everything after that is almost not necessary? Or was the Bitcoin white paper the start of a evolution and an innovation boom? What do you guys think? Like, the miracle already happened, Bitcoin, full stop. I want to polarize the maxis here. Or it's the start of innovation. Start of innovation. The miracle already happened. Come on, guys. Okay, now, same question to you guys. Starting with you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously think the white paper was enormously important, but obviously it wasn't everything. I think it's been 16 years almost since the white paper's been written. A lot has happened since then. Bitcoin has changed enormously. And I think the growth of the network, I doubt even Satoshi could have estimated that it would grow this fast, this quickly. Who knows? But I think it's truly startling to think about a little paper with some lines of code, and now it's $1 trillion market cap with billions of dollars of capital being expended all over the world in order to produce it and mine it. So obviously we've come a long way. Lightning has been an enormous improvement, and all kinds of new ideas were added by developers over time. Yet, to the substance of your question, I definitely side on the side that sees that this is really what matters here. Ultimately, this is, as a technical solution, it's what matters is that we've managed to find a way to arrive at consensus without a centralized point. In other words, the solution to the Byzantine generals problem. And then because of that, we were able to monetize a digital commodity in a way that was provably fair so that anybody could mine it, and it continued to operate at the free market where anybody could mine it, anybody could operate it. It's always only ever had users. It's never really had admins. Perhaps, for the first few months or so, it had admins, but ever since then, everybody who uses it has been a user. So I think that really is the important innovation. And my skepticism remains that I don't really see much value in terms of the technology and the things that are happening outside of Bitcoin beyond, to your point on speculation, beyond the ability to introduce tokens, which then allows for a speculative bubble and crash to happen, which can generate a lot of speculation around it. But I think there is a limit to how much that market can continue to run. What I think is really sustainable is a store of value that people will hold. In other words, a form of money that people trade. And that's where I see Bitcoin.
Yeah. Romain?
I think Bitcoin comes from decades of scientific research. Like proof of work was inventing like decades before, right? Cryptographic primitives that Bitcoin leverage already are coming from scientific research. So it's a good, it was, on the other hand, it was the first successful deployment of digital currency. So that's a big foundational moment. But research continues. Like you have papers about like proof of useful work now. How can you use have work in blockchain using proof of work that can be scientific computing, a bit like folding at home, where during the pandemic, people were contributing their resources to calculate protein folding. You have the same potentially for proof of useful work, where you contribute some work for AI, ML, machine learning, ZK proving, etc., and make that work useful and not just solving arbitrary puzzles like Bitcoin does. So to me, the science continues, right? The technology evolves, and you have amazing projects all around, like proof of stake blockchains, like now Ethereum and earlier Cardano or Polkadot. You have ZK blockchains like Mina or Midnight or blockchain protocol. I mean, this is ongoing innovation to solve scalability issues, to solve inclusion, having people like being able to contribute, etc., etc. To me, we are on our road of innovation. It continues.
Spoken like a true Darwinian believer. I love that. Ashton, your take.
I think Bitcoin specifically, it's like, star alignments. Like sometimes things happen randomly, that right thing happened at the right time. I think Bitcoin is one of that situation. Because prior to Bitcoin white paper and how before Bitcoin took off, there's so many research, whether it's a DLT systems or cryptographically secured, some sort of a cash mechanism, peer-to-peer cash. This is in 1980s and 1990s. There's so many research happened, but nothing really happened. So I call it more like a vertical integrated opportunity or a solution. Because it's a really good technology on paper. The code can be spaghetti. But also you have the economical model built in, and then you've got the timings right, and then the people who actually promoted it, they promoted it correctly, like early people. The story was good. I think it just sometimes, things happen like in a perfect combination that works. So I think that's one of a movement. So that's where I think, again, look, there's so many theories why it worked in a way, but I think it's just a random event where it happened to be a good technology, it has a good economic model, especially the tokenomics design is good, happened to be in the right time, and it came from the right people in the right way. Could be that's the reason. So for me, it's more like a vertically integrated opportunity / situation.
Thank you. Now, as a continuation on the same question, now the title of our talk is Envisioning Crypto in 2030. Where do you see this thing going? Anyone? Where do you see this thing going? 2030.
You can go if you
Are
want.
we mining on the moon? What are we doing?
Are you talking about Bitcoin?
Anything. Your call.
If we repeat the same sort of cycles, the Bitcoin will have some sort of a price action. But I'm not a big in speculation. But I think we will get to especially DLT systems, we will be integrating with a lot of ecosystems. There will be a lot of improvements for sure. I think the governments and especially regulators, because I worked with regulators a lot, like 2019 to 2020, I spent literally 7 days with 200 people I used to work with to build legalizing smart contracts, legalizing DAOs. I think the regulation sort of areas that people try to build sandboxes, building sandboxes and then taking seriously having some integrations work, I think we will have a lot of technological integrations will happen by 2030. And then obviously there will be tons of different mini bubbles or mini industries will merge. And I think Bitcoin games is going to be a big thing. Decentralized finance obviously going to be a big thing. And this topic is very biased, deep in specifically, bringing a decentralized infrastructure, because we never really truly had where we have all the established fiber networks, we have all these data centers, we have so much vast number of GPU, CPUs around the world, but never actually pull that into Web3 space. I think by bringing that, so you have a faster and a better efficient infrastructure. And when you do that, imagine your underlying cost is go down to, let's say, from $1 to a cent. Things change. So I think those innovations will bring a bigger, because it's all, if you really think about how things evolve in any tech industry, so first it's basically infrastructure. When you have a better infrastructure, then developers come and build things on top. And it's going to take a while. And then developers build things, and then users actually start using it, then developers started tweaking it. It's a life cycle. So I think 2030 will have a lot of really good protocols dominating certain sectors, and you have a lot of users. Like Chainlink, I remember Chainlink, one of a summit, a SmartCon event. Eric Schmidt he was a CEO, ex-CEO of Google, and he said to Chainlink co-founder, Sergey, give me 100 million users and I'll tell you how to monetize Chainlink.
Wow.
Right? So give me 100 million users and I'll tell you how to monetize. I think by 2030 we'll get there into certain protocols. So it's not a prediction, but that's with a high probability.
Okay. Romain?
I'm going to separate Bitcoin because to me the Bitcoin game is more a digital gold game. The rest of crypto is more about decentralizing the web, right? And making this world a bit more efficient and equitable, fair, accessible by everyone. I mean, we have examples in emerging economies where if you take a loan, you are going to pay 80% interest per year, 80, right? Who is paying 80% interest here, right? So if we can bring to those emerging economies decent, because this is indecent, right? Decent interest rates, acceptable interest rates, so people don't stay and are forced to stay in poverty, I think we will be in a better world. So all cryptocurrency are working on smart contracts. I mean, that's what differentiates Bitcoin from the rest. There's no smart contract there, right? You can do much with Bitcoin than sending value across. In Cardano, in Midnight, in Ethereum, etc. All those ecosystems are working towards scalability, more transaction, more features, being able to equip nations or communities with mechanism to self-organize and send value across, but doing business, integrating some compliance check, etc., etc. So this is a different game to me. And by 2030, I think, I hope, but the experience for users will be seamless. You should not know so much technical words when you come to using a digital currency. Like even, everything I said just before, actually. It should be transparent. It should be like a Venmo. Like, the only thing you know is that you are going to send money to someone or interact with a business, and that's all. What do you need to know, right? The rest is transparent, and we'll have win when blockchain will not be a topic of discussion.
2030, users won't know they're using Bitcoin. I'll play with that. Yes, sir.
I would say, if I were to look at Bitcoin, I would imagine more of the same. I'd imagine Bitcoin is likely going to be several orders of magnitude, several times its size as what it is today. Conservatively, maybe 2-3 times by 2030, and that means a lot more liquidity in Bitcoin, a lot more markets in Bitcoin, a lot more adoption for Bitcoin by corporations as a treasury asset, and consequently, more and more inter-business dealings with Bitcoin and more international settlement happening with Bitcoin. I think by 2030 we'll see more and more of that. In terms of the broader industry, I think we're going to see more and more of the speculative mania happen, but I think the trend that we're seeing now is this is becoming a lot more distributed and decentralized, so that we're getting more and more tiny little coins that come and go in a few weeks, in a few months. So really hastening the entire process and allowing it to proceed at a much higher pace. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, and more distribution and decentralization, and undermining the kind of overall idea of stable networks that might reasonably be used in a larger commercial manner, because ultimately for me the most important thing remains liquidity. And so the more applications you add, the more you undermine the case for money as liquidity, since money is supposed to be an asset that doesn't have yield, it doesn't have risk, it's something that's supposed to be liquid. So I see this becoming more and more clear over the next few years for Bitcoin.
All right, thank you for that. Now, we only have a few minutes left, and what I want to propose is a rapid-fire questions to my panelists here. And real quick, I'll pose a question and knee-jerk first reaction that comes to mind. All right, you guys ready? Starting with you, sir. BlackRock ETFs, good or bad for crypto?
Bad.
Bad.
I think it's good for Bitcoin. It can't hurt.
Good.
Good.
So good. What do you guys think? Anyone? Thumbs up or thumbs down? I see a mix, guys. We need to get some consensus here, no? Second question. I see a lot of talk on my Twitter sometimes. Fiat money is going to die at some point. So the question I have, if fiat money dies, what gives Bitcoin or any crypto its value? What are we going to have as a replacement? What are you guys' thoughts?
Fiat is not going to die.
Whether fiat dies or not is not something I have strong opinions about. As I discussed in my book, I think Bitcoin can continue to grow and become bigger than fiat without fiat dying. But it's ultimately an individual question, so fiat is dead if you want it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Romain?
Coexisting.
Coexisting.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Now, next question. What have you seen in recent months or weeks that you want to leave the audience with? Like, please look into that. It's so exciting. Whether a piece of paper, a research paper, or you name it, a piece of innovation, something that excited you in the last couple of months that you would leave the audience with, or a book, could be anything.
I think the infrastructure space, it's
Really?
very interesting. Yeah, I think if you just go Google trend and look for infrastructure space, in specific, I'm talking about Web3 space specifically. Yeah. There's a lot of buzz happening. I think if it's a long due thing. The other sector, obviously, the blockchain games, because we had a blockchain games kind of a mini bubble that we had it, during COVID time, like 2020. It's coming back with a better, because the actual economic models like play to earn models didn't really work because you just print as many tokens as possible to just incentivize people. It wasn't sustainable. But if you look at the blockchain game industries, a lot of people took the time, they learned lessons, and then now they build like great technologies. I think with the growth of the current price actions, they will bring like really great innovations. I think blockchain games and decentralized finance is if you want to look, Bitcoin will introduce, we might have like a Bitcoin DeFi summer, right?
Okay.
Possibly. So I think Bitcoin DeFi summer, blockchain games, and infrastructure.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I think one really exciting thing going on is the development of Nostr, which is a protocol for the distribution of data, similar to Bitcoin, but for social media, essentially. And it's something that has the magical property of not having its own token. So there is no operational reason to buy any other token for it to operate. It continues to just work whether you use money or not, because it's just information. And I think there are a lot of other uses in integrating Nostr, integrating social media, and integrating it with Bitcoin and Lightning Network. And Fedi, in particular, I think is worth looking into. So look into Fedi.
All right, Romain?
I'm excited by Doom on a state channel. We are implementing Doom game on a state channel just to show that you can do real-time gaming on blockchain. So that's fun. Decentralized governance, it's Voltaire era for Cardano community. If you want to see the experiment of like giving voting actually power to the people, it's interesting to follow. And merge staking.
Merge staking.
Yeah, you know, eigenlayer, restaking, etc. You can go beyond that. You can have like sidechains that are validated by different communities of operators. So you could have a partner chain that's SDK that we are launching that can be, I saw the time, that can be validated by Ethereum and Cardano operators at the same time, for example.
All right. Now, the thing that excites me the most, I recently saw a startup, and they're building a balloon, and it's a restaurant. They shoot you up to space, and you have a 3-hour dinner in space, and you come back. That's the thing that excites me the most. So
Wow.
if you want to join, let me know. I'm ready for that. I want to thank you guys so much for this. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate
Thank
it. Now, give them a round of applause, because it's the first panel and the word AI wasn't mentioned once. Yeah. Right? Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Yes.
Call in Matthias and Megan to close up the day. Don't leave, guys. Don't leave.